In the center of the living room sat a little girl, cross-legged, clutching a doll. Her small fingers fumbled with the tiny scarf she was trying to drape over its head. Every attempt ended with pins slipping and folds collapsing, and she looked up in frustration. Across from her, in a rocking chair that creaked softly with each motion, sat her grandmother. Silver strands of hair peeked from beneath a neatly pinned hijab. Her hands, aged but steady, rested on a string of prayer beads, clicking rhythmically as she rocked. Her eyes, deep and warm, met the girl's, and for a moment, the room seemed suspended in time. "Grandma," the girl asked softly, "why do you always touch your hijab before you pray?" The grandmother smiled faintly, a flicker of memory passing through her eyes. That one question carried decades of struggle, doubt, courage, and reflection. She took a slow breath and began. "My story begins long before you were born," she said, her voice steady, carrying the weight of a life lived. "I was 12 years old when I first came to America from Egypt." She leaned forward slightly, her hands resting on the arms of the chair. "I remember the airport vividly, the cold air, the unfamiliar sounds, the smell of coffee mixed with the scent of polished floors. Everything was strange. The streets, the language, the people. I was a child, small and timid, yet I carried something precious with me. A piece of home wrapped in cloth, my mother's hijab." Her gaze drifted to the window, as if the memory of that first morning walked beside her. "My mother always wore her hijab with quiet dignity. To her, it was faith, identity, and honor. To me, it was protection, a reminder of who I was, even when the world seemed unkind. But to others, it made me different. On my first day at my new school, I felt every eye on me as soon as I stepped into the hallway. I could hear whispers, the soft laughter of children who noticed that I did not quite belong. Some boys tugged at my scarf, teasing me with words that made my cheeks burn and my heart ache. The grandmother paused, letting the memory linger in the room like a fragile thread. I remember trying to hold my head high, but my steps were heavy, each one echoing my fear. I returned home in tears, clutching my mother's hand. "Be patient, my daughter," she said, her voice soft but firm. "Allah sees everything, and He is with you always." Those words comforted me, but the ache did not leave. She leaned back in the chair, her hands tightening around her beads. Childhood for me was a constant balancing act. I wanted friends, laughter, and the joy that seemed to come so easily to others. But I also wanted to honor what I had been taught, to keep the hijab close to my heart. Sometimes I hid it in my backpack, let my hair flow freely for a few moments, or tried to blend in. Each choice brought relief, then guilt, and a reminder that I was walking a path alone. Her eyes softened as she recalled the small acts of rebellion. I remember one afternoon, during recess, I joined a game with other girls. My scarf had slipped from my hair, and for a few brief minutes, I was invisible, just another child. I laughed, ran, and felt a lightness I hadn't felt in months. But when I returned home, I stared at my reflection in the mirror, and my heart sank. Where had my courage gone? Was I betraying something sacred, or merely surviving? She shifted slightly, the rhythm of her rocking chair matching the beat of her memories. The hallways of school were a battlefield, whispers following me like shadows. Teachers smiled sometimes, some offered kind words, but often I felt invisible. I wanted friends, but I feared judgment, and the hijab made me both visible and vulnerable. I learned early that the world could be harsh, and faith, patience, and quiet strength were my only shields. Teenage years also brought dreams and aspirations, whispered in journals she kept hidden beneath her bed. She wrote of hopes for college, a career, friendships, and love, always threading them with questions of identity and faith. She imagined herself succeeding, but always with the underlying fear that the world might reject her for who she was. The hijab, she realized, was not merely a garment. It was the embodiment of those fears, dreams, and her own emerging sense of self. One particularly difficult day, she came home in tears after an argument with a close friend. "Why do you always hide behind that scarf?" the friend had asked, frustration and misunderstanding in her voice. "Why can't you just be like everyone else?" The words pierced her like a blade. That evening, she sat alone in her bedroom, touching the fabric of her scarf, and whispered a prayer. She asked Allah for patience, for strength, and for clarity. Tears fell, but in the quiet, she also felt something stir, a quiet voice inside, reminding her that the hijab was a choice of dignity, not a barrier to friendship or acceptance. Through the storm of adolescence, she learned the first truths about resilience. She learned that identity is not something to be hidden, but something to be nurtured, even when misunderstood. She learned that compromise might be necessary in social situations, but surrender was not. She learned that faith, even when challenged, provides a quiet strength that no ridicule or misunderstanding can diminish. By the time she reached the end of high school, she had faced countless battles, whispers in the hallways, stolen glances, judgment, and curiosity. She had moments of rebellion, moments of compromise, and moments of triumph. Each step, each choice, each prayer was a brick in the foundation of the woman she would become. And even in the moments of fear, doubt, and despair, the seeds of resilience, courage, and self-respect had been planted deeply, waiting to bloom in the years ahead. High school was a world of shifting alliances, sudden betrayals, and fleeting friendships. The hallways were a river of sound, lockers slamming, voices echoing, sneakers squeaking against polished floors. She moved through it all like a shadow, careful to keep her distance yet longing to belong. Every glance she received, every whisper she overheard, seemed to measure her worth against some invisible standard she could never meet. Her hijab had become both armor and target. Some students admired it quietly, while others mocked it openly. There were days when she would pin it carefully, smooth every fold, and walk with her head held high, feeling a sense of pride swell inside her chest. Other days, she would let it slip, tucking it into her backpack or letting it hang loosely, simply to avoid attention. That constant negotiation between visibility and invisibility became exhausting. Classroom dynamics added another layer of complexity. Teachers often praised her intelligence and dedication, but she struggled to reconcile her achievements with the social friction she faced. Group projects were particularly fraught. She was eager to contribute, yet feared judgment. Sometimes classmates would make subtle remarks about her background, her faith, or her appearance, leaving her unsure whether to respond or retreat. Those small interactions, repeated over time, left invisible marks, shaping her understanding of self and society. Friendships were fragile and complicated. Some friends were genuinely curious and kind, asking questions about her faith and culture. She welcomed these interactions cautiously, wanting to educate without feeling exposed. Others, however, treated her difference as an obstacle, a source of amusement, or even suspicion. Lunchtimes were particularly challenging. While others laughed and shared inside jokes, she sometimes ate alone, navigating the quiet ache of isolation. Yet even in those moments, she found small victories: a smile from a teacher passing by, a shared pencil with a classmate who didn't judge, a whispered "good morning" that carried genuine warmth. The inner conflict continued to simmer. She wanted acceptance, to be part of the laughter and ease of her peers, yet she also longed for the grounding reassurance of her faith. Prayer became her sanctuary. She would slip into the quiet of the library or an empty classroom, bowing her head and whispering to Allah. Those moments were fleeting but profound, providing a sense of stability and peace amidst the chaos of adolescence. Romance and social curiosity added another layer of challenge. Boys would sometimes look at her differently, their glances loaded with curiosity or judgment. She felt self-conscious, conflicted between natural curiosity and the guidance of her upbringing. These experiences intensified her inner dialogue. Who am I? How do I navigate attraction, friendship, and identity without losing myself? Each new experience was a test, each interaction a lesson. Despite the struggles, there were triumphs that built her confidence. She excelled in subjects she loved: literature, history, languages, and found joy in discovering new ideas. Participation in clubs and extracurricular activities gave her small victories, moments where she felt seen for her talents rather than her appearance. The drama club, in particular, became a haven and propriety. She observed others navigating these waters with seeming ease, while she struggled to reconcile her desires with her values. It was a delicate dance, often filled with hesitation and reflection. In these moments, the hijab's absence felt both liberating and empty, a symbol of freedom she longed to reclaim, not just outwardly, but in heart and soul. By the end of her first year, the internal tension had reached a subtle crescendo. She realized that independence without grounding left her vulnerable, that social acceptance without authenticity felt hollow. The hijab, tucked away in her drawer, called to her not as an obligation, but as a promise of self-respect, dignity, and faith. She understood with painful clarity that the years of compromise and experimentation had taught her invaluable lessons, but also that she could no longer ignore the quiet voice inside her heart. It was a crisp autumn evening, the sky painted in streaks of amber and deep violet, when the moment that would change everything arrived. She had been walking back from a small gathering with classmates, the campus quieting as night descended. The streetlights flickered intermittently, casting long shadows across the pathways. Her heart was light from the laughter earlier, a rare feeling she had tasted in months, but the world seemed simultaneously calm and ominous. A figure appeared behind her, footsteps echoing hers with an unsettling rhythm. The shadows stretched across her path, and her pulse quickened. She felt that familiar pang of fear she had known since childhood, amplified by the independence she had assumed over the past years. Stay calm, she whispered to herself, but her voice was swallowed by the quiet night. The footsteps accelerated, matching her pace. Her mind raced. She remembered her mother's words. Allah is with you. Trust Him, even when fear grips your heart. She clutched the straps of her backpack, heart hammering, eyes scanning for a safe place. Then, instinctively, her hand brushed against the scarf tucked in her bag, a relic she hadn't worn consistently for months. A surge of thought washed over her. It wasn't just cloth. It was strength, protection, and faith. Fear and hesitation battled inside her as she reached for the scarf. Wrapping it around her head felt like calling upon decades of memory, courage, and resilience. The fabric, though light, seemed to carry a tangible weight of power. She adjusted it quickly, letting it settle around her shoulders. Immediately, something shifted. Her fear remained, but it was tempered by resolve, by the knowledge that she was not truly alone. Allah was with her, and her faith was a shield. The footsteps drew closer. She spun around slightly, heart racing, prepared for confrontation. But the shadow revealed itself to be nothing more than a fellow student, equally startled by the near-empty street. Relief flooded through her, and she laughed nervously, the tension uncoiling in a rush of adrenaline. The encounter, though minor, struck a chord deep within her. She realized that fear had been a constant companion throughout her life, shaping decisions, restricting actions, and sometimes leading her to compromise her values. But courage, she now understood, was the act of moving forward despite fear. That night, in her dorm room, she sat before her mirror, wrapped in the scarf fully for the first time in months. Her reflection seemed unfamiliar, yet deeply comforting. She studied the contours of her face, the strength in her gaze, and a quiet sense of empowerment emerged. Tears welled in her eyes, not from fear, but from recognition. She had reclaimed something she had almost lost. Not just a piece of cloth, but her own identity. The following weeks became a period of conscious transformation. She experimented with wearing the hijab consistently, navigating social interactions with newfound confidence. Whispers in the hallway still existed, but they no longer dictated her choices. Questions, curiosity, and subtle judgments from peers were met with grace and calm. Each morning, she adjusted the scarf carefully, an act of self-assertion and devotion intertwined. College presentations, group projects, and campus activities became opportunities to stand in her truth. She spoke with conviction, participated actively, and navigated challenging conversations with tact and confidence. The hijab was no longer a source of fear or insecurity. It had become a statement of self-respect, dignity, and faith. Every fold, every pin, every careful adjustment carried the lessons of years past. Childhood struggles, teenage doubts, high school conflicts, and the fragile journey of self-discovery. She began mentoring younger students, particularly those navigating questions of identity and faith. She listened to their fears, shared her experiences, and offered encouragement. It was in guiding others that she fully recognized the depth of her transformation. The girl who had once hidden in hallways, fearful of judgment, had become a woman capable of inspiring courage in others. And through it all, she understood a truth that had eluded her for years. The hijab was never merely about appearance or social expectation. It was about inner strength, choice, and unwavering faith. It symbolized the ability to stand tall in the face of adversity, to embrace identity fully, and to walk with dignity regardless of the world's gaze. That autumn night, the fear and uncertainty she had carried for so long finally gave way to clarity. The granddaughter tilted her head, curiosity shining in her eyes. "Were you scared?" she asked. "Yes," her grandmother admitted gently. "I was very scared at times, but fear does not mean we are weak. Fear means we are human. What matters is how we respond." I chose to embrace it, step by step, and in doing so, I discovered strength I didn't know I had. The hijab became a companion through the storms, a reminder of who I am and the faith that guides me. She reached out, holding the little girl's hand, feeling the soft warmth of innocence and wonder. One day, my dear, you will face choices that will challenge you, that will test your courage. Remember this: your faith, your values, and your heart are your own. Protect them, honor them, and know that courage is not the absence of fear, but the choice to act despite it. The little girl nodded solemnly, clutching her doll tightly. Will I be brave like you, Grandma? Her grandmother's heart swelled with love and quiet pride. You already are, my darling. Bravery comes in many forms: small steps, quiet decisions, and staying true to yourself. One day, you will look back and see that every choice, every challenge, every moment of doubt helped shape the person you are meant to be. For a long moment, the room was silent, except for the soft ticking of a clock and the faint clicking of beads through practiced fingers. The past, the present, and the future seemed to converge in that space. The girl who had struggled, the woman who had persevered, and the granddaughter who would one day inherit the story. The grandmother leaned back, letting the sunlight warm her face, a serene smile settling into place. She realized that the hijab, once a source of fear and conflict, had become a symbol of love, resilience, and guidance. Through it, she had learned patience, courage, and the power of identity. She had faced doubt, judgment, and moments of despair, and had emerged whole, steadfast, and at peace. And now, as she shared her story with the next generation, she understood that her journey was not only her own. It was a legacy, a testament to the power of faith, perseverance, and self-respect. The room seemed to hold a quiet magic, a bridge between past and future, struggle and triumph, fear and empowerment. Grandma, the little girl whispered, I want to wear my scarf too. Her heart leapt, a surge of joy and pride flooding through her chest. She reached out, helping the child drape the scarf over her doll with care. Then wear it with love, my dear. Wear it with pride, courage, and faith. And remember, it is always a part of who you are, not just what others see. In that simple, quiet moment, the grandmother realized that her journey, years of struggle, doubt, and discovery, had come full circle. Through the hijab, she had found her strength, reclaimed her identity, and passed on the most important lesson of all: that courage, faith, and self-respect are timeless gifts, to be treasured and nurtured for generations. The room glowed in the soft evening light, the grandmother and granddaughter together, bound by love, story, and the enduring power of choice.